On today's show, we have a special guest, Steve Fox from Windsor, Ontario, a top financial advisor. And we're going to talk about giving back to your community. Steve's going to talk a little bit about trips that we've organized to Honduras. He's going to talk about some of the stories that we all shared there. And he's going to talk about the lessons that we all learned from giving back to our communities. Hi, I'm Chris Reynolds, and I'm on a mission to help independent financial advisors build a better business through a remarkable client experience. In this podcast, you're going to learn how to do that from my conversations with the visionaries, the leaders, the independent advisors who are reshaping the future of the financial advice industry. At the end of each episode, you're going to walk away with an actionable idea that you can take and use right now, and it will help you to build a better business today. This is Turning the Page. We're very lucky people in Canada, and in this industry, we're extremely lucky. We get to help amazing clients succeed with their financial goals while growing successful businesses of our own. We lead a great, blessed life. But as Spiderman says, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think that as we grow our business, it's important to be responsible in that business and give back to the community in large. Philanthropy is very important to me, both personally, and I certainly know it's important to the people at IPC. So much so that, for years in the month of November, up to the time, of course, of the pandemic, which kind of put a wrench into things, a whole group of team members from IPC, financial advisors from across this great Canada of ours, we made time to go down to Honduras and give back both our time, our energy, and our financial support to some of the local communities there. And what we're there to is really improve their living conditions. And we'll get into this of why Honduras and why those people. But let me tell you, we have made, as a group, a very profound impact on the communities that we've worked with. And I can only tell you from my own experience, because I've gone down there now on many, many occasions, that not only do they get a lot out of it, but I can tell you I probably get way more out of it than they do. Even when we can't attend in person because of various things, whether it's pandemic or there's some situations happening this year, we're always going to be sending our financial support to the communities down there. And today, I thought this would be a great topic to talk about how business professionals can give back to their community, why we do it, and what the benefit really is. And to help me do that, I have my very special guest today. I have Steve Fox. Steve Fox comes from the beautiful city of Windsor. Now he's a farmer. Not only is he in Windsor and a financial advisor, but he's also a farmer. But we've known each other for well over 20 years. He's been 30 years in the business. And he makes a real difference in people's lives. He has a real personalized approach to working with his clients. He now is going through the succession that we've talked about with his son, Mike. They work as a team. They also have Karen, Deanna, Victoria, his wife, also helps out, who's the real boss in the whole practice. And they produce a great experience for their clients in Windsor. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
I'm delighted to be here, Chris.
It's great to have you on. As I said, we talk about this particular topic all the time, and I thought, well, we should just record it. So, what is your story? How did you get here?
The long story won't fit on the podcast. The short story, the short story is that I grew up in a family that was very disciplined with their money. I also grew up in a family that was extremely loving and giving. So this was modeled for me right from the start. And so I struggled through the beginning part of my life and into the work life and just did not feel really comfortable with the direction where I was going. I had somebody introduce this possibility to me, and I remember going to speak with Victoria when I had 4 small kids and said, "Hey, babe, how about I just quit my job and start a financial planning practice?"
Of course, that sounds like a great adventure. Why not?
It sounds very reasonable. Anyway, she agreed with me, and off we went, and the rest is history.
Well, it certainly is history. And so the first question, of course, that always comes up is, as a business person, as somebody who has, built a thriving business, why give back to your community? What compels you to do that?
I think that goes back to my roots. As I said just a minute ago, I grew up in a family that had a real serious focus on giving. And it wasn't because they felt compelled to for any particular reason. It was part of the DNA of my family. Whether it was people that needed a short-term place to stay, we often hosted other people in our home. Whether it was people in need, we would gather a few other people together and see if we could meet their need. Right. So all of this was modeled very heavily for me, and I felt it very natural to continue on. And so we've actually had times when we gathered together with my kids as a family and talked about our growing up times where we often hosted other people, or my daughter has been a staunch advocate for homeless in Toronto.
Right.
And the reason for that is because we did the same things here in downtown Windsor. We would take all the kids and take some blankets and some food and go find somebody that was in need. So I've tried to endeavor to do the same thing for my family, which was now all my kids grown and now with grandkids, to model exactly the same thing.
No, absolutely. And you can pass that on. And I think, one of the things about giving back, and you certainly shared this with me on many occasions, is it's, as much as it is for the people that you do it for, there's also a great feeling that is derived from the helping of others, regardless of what, where, or how, or, the methodologies that are used, that great feeling. And so it leads me to the question that I always get, because we talk about Honduras and the great things that we do there and helping them build their community. First of all, why Honduras? And then we'll talk a little bit about what we do there. But first, why Honduras? Isn't there plenty of need here in Canada? And you name some, homeless, it's not like we are without problems, but why Honduras? Maybe we can get that out of the way.
I was looking for something more to do. And for those who are familiar with the Windsor area, in the downtown core, not unlike Toronto or any other major Canadian city, there's a tremendous amount of need. We think, because we grew up in a country of affluence, that there's shouldn't be anybody that goes hungry, as an example. So a little over 30 years ago, my wife and I and our pastor and his wife helped found an inner city church where our focus was on food security. Mm-hmm. And so we have literally served millions of meals out of the church and out of the downtown core, and we continue to do so. So I found it very opportunistic and rewarding to be able to serve my local community. But then I was exposed through another IPC advisor to something that was outside of the country, and the opportunity that existed to go see something that was on a different level of poverty, something that I never experienced before. And that was back in 2006. And when I made the first trip, I took two of my teenage boys with me on that trip. And we were all profoundly affected by a level of poverty, something that we had never experienced before, and said, I wonder if there's something that we can do here. And that's where it got birthed.
And that's Honduras. And how many trips now have you personally taken to Honduras to help those people?
I have been on or led 13 trips.
13 trips, which is amazing. And to tell you the truth, my story is not too much different. As you know, Steve knows as well. But for our audience, we were at one of the conferences that we put on through our organization, and we have somebody who gives back to the community leader. We have an award that we give out every year, and probably the same individual. And in fact, it's Ken Vanderland. I'll give a shout out to Ken. Absolutely. He actually challenged me. He's like, "Yeah, look at this Chris guy. He might donate to charity, but does he ever get his hands dirty?" And he made an actually very good point. His time is probably worth way more than your checkbook. I was going to say, not always, I'm not the best and handiest guy that there is. But it's true. And I went down for the first time, and I can tell you it was complete culture shock as somebody who is, I would consider myself a well-traveled person. But to your point, the level of poverty, what we think is, oh, well, they can't get something to eat. That's the least of their problems. They just can't even get clean drinking water. Some people, they're walking 4 or 5 hours sometimes during the morning just to get buckets of clean drinking water that they can bring back to where they live. it was a shocking type of experience for me, and I know that you felt the same thing when the first time that you went. So maybe first of all, what kind of projects does the team do in these types of trips when we go down to Honduras? Maybe you can describe them and why we do them, and maybe we can share a few stories with the audience.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity for me to explain one of the core reasons why I'm comfortable doing what we're doing there in Honduras is because the level of poverty, the culture where they live, so many facets of who they are and where they are, I don't understand. Even though I've spent a lot of time there, I really still struggle wrapping my head around what is it like to live there in Honduras in those conditions. So I recognized right away that the opportunity to work with the connected organizations in Honduras was that the needs were self-assessed in the community,
Right.
and that plans were derived. And so we had nothing to do with, oh, we think we should fulfill this need for you or that need for you. Right. They were self-assessed, and then we had opportunity to go provide some of the capital. And so in those communities, there is an extreme need, for the most part, for clean water, for sanitary conditions. So it'd be putting cement floors into people's houses instead of dirt floors. It could be putting up latrines so people have clean bathrooms to use. It could be storage of water, because they have a difficulty finding a place to store water, as well as gaining access to water. So all of those things are things that we can easily do, and they are extremely diligent, hardworking, intelligent people, probably work a lot faster than we do and more efficiently, but it gives them a lot of hope when we show up and work side by side with them. And the capital is the piece that they're lacking. And of course, we have the ability to do that.
Yeah, and it is special. And I know some of the stories. When the first village I went to, for context for the audience, I went and I think there was 80 something families who lived in this village, but there was over 200 children under the age of 12. And if anyone's ever seen what 200 kids look like under the age of 12 in one place, it is overwhelming. There's just literally a sea. And to Steve's point, they're just so happy to see you. They're just so inviting, and they just want to know about you. They want to know about your life. They want to know because they've just never been exposed to this. So Steve said, they can do the work. You give them the money. They provide the resources. They get the materials they need. They can do the work. But the exposure to something else than what they've really lived from generation to generation experiencing is simply amazing, and it's something to see. And some of the stats for people who don't know, Honduras is one of the poorest countries in the entire world, with an average wage of less than $50 per month, US per month. One of the highest crime rates, with over 10,000 murders a year, of which less than 1/3 are even investigated, let alone solved. Very heavy into gangs throughout all of Honduras, which is why the murder rate is so high, and a very corrupt place. In other words, it has, because of all these gang activities, these things happen. And yet the people are still regardless of all this, some of the happiest people I've ever seen. So Steve, for the audience, give me a couple of stories about some of the things that have really moved you in some of the time that you were there.
Oh my goodness. The stories are overwhelming. The first one that comes to mind actually involves you, and it's you surrounded by about 50 young kids who don't speak one word of English, but by the end of the time there, will all be able to repeat back to you, "Mamma mia, that's a spicy meatball."
My English lessons.
Yes. So English lessons in Honduras have been very fun to watch, and to watch the people that we have opportunity to take, the transformation in their thinking and their objectives are probably as profound as what I experienced from the Hondurans. Some of the stories are sad and very emotional. I remember the first time I came back from Honduras, and I came back 2 weeks before Christmas time. Coming back from this experience of the kind of poverty that I experienced there had the potential to completely destroy my wife's Christmas. And she actually warned me, don't you ruin my Christmas.
Don't do that ever.
Don't you ruin my Christmas. But coming back to Canada, the opulence was exaggerated in my mind because of what I had just experienced in Honduras. But some of the times were the interaction that we've been able to have with the Hondurans, the unbelievable appreciation that they have for the sacrifice that they feel we have made. We don't feel it as this huge sacrifice because we don't have a problem in taking a couple of weeks off and going down there and helping. But their perception of volunteerism is almost non-existent because they don't have the means to do that.
Right.
So almost everywhere that we have gone, we have been met by people who would share out of almost nothing with us to show their appreciation. And at times that is very emotionally overwhelming. Just to be able to reflect, as I know, Chris, you have done, on nothing that we've done, just being born in the right place.
Right. That's exactly it. The lottery of life, I call it.
Yep. And having the things that we do. So some of the stories are incredibly rewarding. I have been back to some of the communities that we have worked in subsequently, and they will proudly come in and show you their immaculate clean concrete floor because it has changed their life. And that is a bizarre concept to us, but it's a reality to them.
So, it is. And yeah, the things I think, Steve, that we both see is, how simple some things are to us and seems like very rudimentary, or things that we just take for granted in every single day is the biggest thing ever to them. I remember one story, and I know I've shared this with you on many occasions. One time we were there, and during the night we had all these projects to do, but during the night there was a huge windstorm, and there was a change of plans. This woman, her roof had blown off, and I was like, oh, the roof blew off. Didn't even make sense to me at the time, but I'm like, okay, let's go look at it. So we wandered over quite a ways from the central area that we were at, and literally the roof had blown away. But when I call it a roof, it was a bunch of twigs, and like they had garbage bags on there, and they had a bunch of just branches that seemed to be randomly put on there. And I'm like, yeah, of course it blew away. It collapsed in there. So we pull all the roof off, and we're like, now I'm going to be a roof maker. And I want to be clear that I'm not really that handy with almost anything. I can talk a lot, but I'm not really what you call a handyman around the house. So myself and actually my son had been with me at the time, and we did our best. And there was a bunch of us. Luckily, there were some people who actually knew what they were doing. But between tin sheets and a lot of duct tape and some boards, we finally get this roof on where it's at least going to keep all the rain out. And from behind me, I hear somebody crying. And I'm like, oh, and I turn, and there's this young, and I mean young, she was probably 18, 19, girl crying. And the translator said, oh, this is her house. And I was like, oh, I thought she was crying because we did such a bad job, which I would have cried too, because, looking at it, I was like, oh, it doesn't look so good. And I'm like, in my broken Spanish, saying, I'm so sorry, we'll do a better job. We'll try to fix it. And the translator said, no, she's not crying because of the job. She's crying because she has never had a roof over her children's heads since she moved out. And she had 3 children at the age of 19, if that puts it into context for anybody. And that was probably one of the most moving occasions in my entire life, that something that I thought they were crying because it was so bad, they were crying because it was so good.
I would say that I am not prone to be emotionally overwhelmed, right? I have not. You'd be hard pressed unless you stand on one toe of mine long enough to see me cry. But that happens a lot when I'm in Honduras. It is just this constant, overwhelming, fresh reminder of how blessed we are to be where we are and have what we have. And that is one of the really compelling things that I find with the people that we take, that transformation takes place. I know it's taken place in you. It's constantly taken place in me. And what I find is that over this period of time since 2006, when I have been going back and back and back and back to Honduras, that my objective has always been, what else can I do? What else can I do? What else can I do? And the result has been that the one has been changed is me. I am a completely different person. And I think I'm a better version of the person than before I started that.
Well, I know that both of us have brought our kids on the Honduras trips, both Eric and Nicole. In my case, they both have gone, and I can tell you that they both came back very different people, very, very different people, and they still talk about their experiences there.
I have taken all 4 of my kids at least once. Mike's been a couple of times. Mike works in the office with me. He's been several times. And our youngest, Jordan, was first exposed. He was 15 years old the first time that I took him on the first trip. When he finished high school, he deferred his continuing education for a year and moved to Honduras for 6 months to volunteer.
Wow. Yeah. See, that's a profound impact. That's how many kids do that these days. And so I'll sort of roll it back around to business. Is how do you share all this with your clients? Like, you do it, we both do it for the reasons that we just said, for helping the people, but also helping ourselves, making ourselves better people, giving back to our communities. But the other great part about this is you get to share these experiences with your clients. In my particular case, it's all my team members at head office, as well as all the advisors. But you also get to share it with your clients. And so maybe talk a little bit about that and how that works.
I've done it in a variety of different ways. One is to send out an email just to let people know, oh, I'm headed back to Honduras. This is a project that we're working on, just to keep them kind of aware of what we're doing. But I think, as you sort of talked a little bit about the way I built my business at the beginning of this podcast, is that we have very, very intimate personal relationships with our clients. I know a lot about them, but the reverse is also true. They know a lot about me. And so I'm very comfortable sharing from these experiences with our clients. So they're quite aware of the things that I'm involved in giving back. And I think that that's been a tremendous inspiration to them, because some of the feedback that I've got from my clients is that a couple of clients have said, could I go with you? And I'm like,
yeah.
I was like, I never thought of that. Never even occurred to me. A couple of people have said, well, can I give towards that? That sounds like a really good cause. Could I do that? But I think most of it has been just a keen interest, because people, I don't have to push it in their face. It's just part of the DNA of who I am. And so in the course of conversation, often clients will say, well, when was the last time you went to Honduras? And what did you do?
Right.
Tell me about it. And so it just becomes a normal, natural part of the process. But I also know what my clients are involved in. And so I have opportunity to ask them, tell me about what you're doing, and tell me what the effect is, and how does that feel to you? And so in that normal, natural part of the conversation, which I truly believe comes down to the root of giving, is part of the actual DNA of our planet.
Right.
It's not about getting, it is about giving. And giving gives us the opportunity. Oh, I know this is a terrible example, but I'm going to give you one example that maybe helps to understand this. It was some time ago when Pay It Forward became kind of a thing. You know, you'd get in a line in Tim Hortons and you'd buy the coffee for the people behind you, right, as you're going through the drive-through. And it occurred to me at the time that started, that if everyone paid it forward, then everyone would still get the same thing that they have right now, but the world would be a way happier place.
I was going to say the world would be very happy, because they would see really the nature of human.
Absolutely. So you and I have both worked diligently to try to encourage and support that in others, because you and I both know that this is a universal truth and that it works for everyone and that everyone should participate because it is richly rewarding and it makes the world a way better place.
I would agree wholeheartedly. And again, even if you're just doing your little part, if everyone did their little part, it would be a magical place. So this has been great. So this is always the time where I ask you 3 questions. I never get everyone to prep for this because this is the first thing that comes to your mind. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, one word, and you answer with the word or the best way to explain it. And I always ask people, what are you passionate about? And I think we already know the answer, but I always ask, what are you passionate about?
People.
People.
People
Yeah.
matter.
I was going to say, I think through this interview, I think we got a pretty good sense of what you're passionate about. What is your most memorable experience that you want to share with the audience?
Wow. I see why you don't warn people ahead of time.
It's getting the first one that pops in their head.
Oh my goodness. I have been married just longer than 40 years, and I'll tell you that my wedding was one of the most enjoyable and incredible experiences. I hardly remember anybody that was there or anything that happened. I only remember the experience I had setting up life with my life partner, which has been the most unbelievable thing.
That is awesome. I love that. And lastly, how do you want to be remembered?
Well, that has changed over the years. I certainly wanted to be a good husband and a good dad. And I also love to be perceived as someone who is supportive in our community. Now I have a whole bunch of grandkids, and I've thought more about the legacy that I want to leave. And I believe it is truly wrapped up in how we serve others. And
Right.
And I love spending time with my kids and my grandkids and how we can translate our life's experiences, which includes what we've done in Honduras and what I've done in business and everything, into them so that they can enjoy life to the fullest, which includes a substantial amount of giving.
I love it. And I think that is, Steve, by the way, how you're going to be remembered. So
I
my
hope
rant
so.
is, we are in business. We are incredibly lucky. We have a great industry. We get to deal with great clients. We're very blessed, as I said, and I've written other stories about this, which I published on LinkedIn, that we won the lottery of life being here. We don't have to worry about where our water is going to come from, whether we have electricity, whether we actually have floors that aren't full of disease and made out of sand or dirt. We don't have to worry about the level of corruption or gangs, kidnapping and or taking our children. None of these things are a concern to somebody who lives in Canada. We have other concerns like whether our internet's up or down. We don't really have the same level. We go into a grocery store. It is simply a sight to behold after you've been to a country like Honduras. We're incredibly lucky. And we're also incredibly lucky in this particular business because we get to give back. We get to give back to our communities and the community at large, being in other areas. We get to help people achieve their financial goals and also get them involved in these types of things and giving back. And I think we're in a very blessed place. So for those who are listening to this show, I think the one message we can take away from this is we're very lucky and we should use every opportunity that we possibly can to give back to others. With that, Steve, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Chris, it has been an absolute pleasure to be here with you today, but it has been way more of a pleasure to have the opportunity to spend time with you, both setting up, organizing, and taking trips to Honduras. You're an incredibly diligent worker, and the profound changes that have happened for both you and I are very obviously been translated from you into others. And for that, I must give you credit. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve. And you forgot to mention that I'm a excellent English teacher. I can teach Spanish people English all day long. It's one of my favorite things. And everyone, the fundamental words, once they get Mamma Mia, that's a spicy meatball. Everything else in English is just easy after that. Well, thank you, Steve, for being part of us and sharing your story. It's been a fantastic story, and look forward to future podcasts where we can talk more about this particular topic and others. Thank you again, Steve.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for joining me on Turning the Page. What did you learn from today's episode? If you follow me on LinkedIn, please drop me a comment there. I'd love to chat with you about it over virtual coffee. Send me a message on LinkedIn, or you can do so at our website. The link's in the show notes. I'm Chris Reynolds, and until next time.